Hey guys, welcome to another edition of On Social, the show that talks about everything that has to do with social media, live video, and getting professional live video out on social media. And today we have a pretty exciting episode. We have a lot of graphical changes today, which we're really excited about. But joining me, we've got Mr. Marty McPadden from PodJam.tv. Welcome, sir.
Hello, Stephen. Obviously, I've changed locations here,
You
judging from my
have.
background.
It looks really good. Looks
Somewhere
good.
else.
Looks good. We also have the future Emmy Award winner. We have it's not Jeremy Klusterman, but we do have and you were replaced. You see how easy you were replaced last week? He
Yeah,
he was
I'm
really quick to
beginning
jump.
yes, you know what? I think maybe asking for the green M&Ms in the green room is a bit too much for you guys, so I'm willing to back off of that if I get my lower back, so
So you were out sick yesterday or last week, I should say.
yeah, I got hit with an internal, infection. I'm a diabetic, and those things are never good for diabetics, and it came at a moment where I had 3 live events, last week, and I literally was sick in between them, was in the ER twice, rebounded, and I feel great, and I'm, happy to be back, whether or not, I, get my green M&Ms, so
Well, Jeremy was really kind enough to jump in last week. We had a great discussion last week, and so, I think he was hoping he'd be back on today, but no, it was it was a great discussion we had last week. But we're glad to see that you're doing a lot better.
yeah, thanks.
So today we wanted to kind of talk about a really interesting topic that had come up with content in relation to the social media platforms and the internet, and Marty kind of spearheaded this with content that stands out. How do you make your content stand out? How do you get people to want to engage with your content? And I think this is something that content creators all over the world struggle with. I think this is something I could even honestly say that I've struggled with because everybody out there, no matter what industry that you're in, there's always somebody out there creating similar content to you. But what makes you stand out from the rest of the pack? And Marty, I think you've got some insight into this, right?
Yes, sir. I can at least start this discussion off here, and I've kind of divided into three separate buckets here. You guys have a preview of what we're going to talk about. But yeah, standing out. How do you start? What do you think about? How do you begin? So one of the ways that you can do that is, first of all, you got to decide and define your goal. Very, very important. I mean, you can certainly go online and talk about that, but if you don't know what you're going to talk about, then that's a problem because otherwise you're just going to be sitting out there babbling away. And I've seen people do that. So it's important to certainly start defining your goal. What's next? What do I mean by that? Well, one of the things you need to do is decide what. Let me just hold on here. I thought I had my graphics set.
It doesn't want to jump.
There we
There it
go. There we
goes.
go. Yeah, there we go. So what does that entail, right? So one of the questions you want to ask yourself, what do you want to communicate? And this could be a particular say if you're a hobbyist, right? And you're a woodworker. You might want to talk about carpentry or woodworking, and you have an audience and all that stuff. Um, Decide what you want to communicate. You want to be focused. You just don't want to come on there and just start talking about whatever. You want to have at least a goal and a focus and decide, okay, what do I want to talk about? Very, very important. Second question is that's very important is who's your audience, right? You can go on there and there are what 7 billion people in the world. You're probably not going to talk to all of them all at once. You certainly want to decide who your audience is, and I would say this. I think the more narrower, the better. You really want to niche down, and I would not be afraid of niching down too much. You know, and I'll give you an example. That a friend of mine, Mark Rogers, has a YouTube channel and talks about college football. He's been doing this for almost a decade now. When he first started, he's a sports fan, and he had no knowledge of YouTube. He went very broad, talked about really all sports, and he really wasn't getting a lot of uptake. It was kind of too broad, right? His real passion is college football. I know a couple years in, we talked about it, and we said, Mark, why don't you talk about really what you're passionate about, really what you really care about? That's college football. You know, so start with that. So he identified his audience as college football fans. So that was very important for him to do. And the third question that you want to ask yourself is what challenges can, and this is a kind of a tip and maybe coming up with things that you may want to do video about or live video. What challenges, once you identify the audience, what challenges can you solve for your audience? Right? So you may have a talent or skill, and there may be something that you identify with your audience, and they may be coming back to you and say, "Oh," and it could be like, let's say it might be about how to get good audio on your live stream, and you may be an audio engineer, and you may have some really good tips and really good knowledge to share, and you know that's a pain point. Well, that's something that you could share with your audience, and that's certainly going to make your content stand out. So, gentlemen, Jeff or Stephen, what do you think? Anything to add to those three things?
Yeah, I think those are, uh, you know, very articulate tips when we talk about really, what does it mean to create value? And the way I like to look at value is originality with opportunity. I think to me that's the best value. And so what would that really mean, right? It sounds a little abstract. If you're in theater and you're talking about maybe there's a performance coming to town, or you're in the arts, you can set in a room like we're doing right now. You can chroma key, or you can do it in front of a live a live backdrop, and you can talk all about how cool it will be this Friday when the performers take the stage. Or maybe you make a phone call to the art director or the person in charge of the theater, and you take your phone down there with you, and you do your live stream walking through the doors of this 200-year-old theater, and you're talking about all the great people who, maybe started there. Maybe it's somebody that's now famous, and you interview this other person, and you're like, "Hey, tell me, what's it like to be on this stage that's 80 or 100 years old?" And maybe you pull one of the people aside, and the idea here is that there's, I think it was Walter Murch, I think he was the editor of The Godfather, that has a term that a lot of editors know, and it's show, don't tell. And the more that you can illustrate visually, we talk about video being powerful, well, use it for all it's got. Create an opportunity, whether it's by making phone calls, making connections, and then take that opportunity and run with it and show people the experience you're trying to communicate to them. And then you can add in your value and all the messaging around that. But I think to me, that's where you really begin to stand out, is when someone's watching something and, they're scrolling through the 80 cats with bacon and, all the animals and everything on Facebook. And then they kind of back up a little bit and like, well, what's going on here? This is kind of cool. That's where I think you're going to get your home run.
No, I agree because I think a lot of people struggle with this. A lot of people, including myself, because like, well, why would you want to watch me when there's so many other people out there doing exactly what I'm doing? And what do I bring to the table? And I ask myself that all the time. What am I bringing to the table that's making these 100 people? Because I think people get into the whole competition level. As Marty alluded to, there's so many people in the world. You're only scratching like a little nugget of those people, if you will.
Right.
And I don't think people realize that just work within the confines of the audience that you have and be the best that you can for that. And you'll slowly be able to develop that content that's works for you. I don't know. In
Yeah.
my opinion, that's what I do. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, last week we talked about this for a minute. There's a an influencer on LinkedIn, Joy McAdams, who shared. I told you about this last week. This wonderful concept of frequency, and for me, it has been this revolutionary thing this year to really realize that there's no social totem pole. You don't start at the
Mhm.
bottom, you work your way to the top. You're a radio station among a million radio stations, and there are people that are going to listen to your frequency over somebody else's. And when you really realize that, it takes away a lot of the fear, a lot of the strain of like, where do I fit in? How do I make this whole thing work? And as well as I do, you meet people every day that end up being lifelong pals, and people you stay in touch with because you're connecting on a vibe that they connect with. So it's entirely possible to do that.
And I think going into this, right? Like I think you have to have some kind of, I don't want to say a catch, but something like, one of the things that really drew people to the shows that I did was being interactive, right? That was something that I really brought to the table. And not only did I do an organized show like we're doing now, but I was interactive. I interacted with the chat room. I mean, we take the time before the show, we welcome everybody in here. during the show, we're looking at the chat room, and if we see somebody puts a good point, we bring it out, right? That was something that was really niche at the time because everybody just wants to talk, 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 talk. Nobody wants to have engagement with anybody.
Mhm.
So that was something that I found that kind of set us apart. Now the new show that I've been working on, the retro gaming show, that's really taken off because one, we're bringing industry professionals and icons, if you will, to the show, but we're also engaging with the chat room and giving them an opportunity to call in, ask questions that they normally wouldn't get to ask A, these companies, and B, these celebrities that are coming on the show. So again, that's another niche that there's other gaming shows out there's other people doing that type of thing, but nobody's doing that. And I think that's what's kind of made us a little bit successful in that retrospect, Marty.
Well, you've become a platform. You created a platform, and especially for someone like yourself who's been involved in live video for quite some time, that's a real service to people. That's another reason to go live, and you have that platform, and then you can bring um, your guests in, and then you bring the audience in, and the audience generally does not have the platform, but they can. And you're providing that platform for everyone to interact, and that's huge, and that's always going to you're always going to build community that way. That's great. And the other thing is, I want to totally emphasize what you just said about niching down.
Right.
What you did with gaming, bringing those people in is key. There's always an audience. You don't think it's too niche because there's always people out there. And I think when Mark niched down to college football, that's when everything started taking off, and he's really doing quite well now with it. So, anyways, onto part two of this discussion. What's the next thing you got to think about? Well, one of the ways that you can create content that is appealing to more people is tell a compelling story. Storytelling, I'm sure you've heard this and people have talked about this. Storytelling is so important when it comes to video. Video is a visual medium, and so use all of it. Even if you're just doing audio, that's a storytelling medium. So really tell that story. What are some of the things you can do? Well, one of the things you can do is teach or demonstrate a skill or talent. I talked about this a little bit before. If say you have a business, say if you're a video editor, and you have video editing skills, and you have a business. Well, that's one thing that you could show and teach and demonstrate. Teach a skill, and you're doing two things there. One, you're helping people. Number one, and number two, you're demonstrating that you actually know how to do it. And if you have a business, that's good for your business. But two, say if you're just a hobbyist, you're helping people, you're building community. That's always good, So and also it's engaging content. People are going to be more apt to watch you. Another thing you could do is share an inspirational story. We're all familiar with social media, and this is a social media type show. Some of the things that resonate on social are inspirational stories, right? You may have something personally that happened in your life, or happens in a friend's life, or someone you know. That's incredibly powerful, and people really resonate with that. Along with that, and I'm going to go back to my slides here, Stephen. So, um, but along with that is tell a personal story. The 2 and 3 here kind of work hand in hand. Inspiration and personal. Make it personal. People love, and again, I'm not talking about sharing every aspect of your life. And this is especially true for people that do more personal content. Maybe you don't have a business, and you're just kind of maybe a vlogger, or just doing maybe you have a YouTube channel. You're just doing personal content, but people resonate with that stuff. I mean, and the thing I would say there is, say you're going through something and you have a platform, you have an audience, and you could share. I will guarantee you there's someone out there that feels the same way, or you might help someone, and that's going to resonate with the audience there. And I would throw this in as a bonus here, and this is more technical, and using video, but use complementary on-screen graphics. Um, Obviously, I'm using kind of a PowerPoint type of presentation to illustrate these points. I'm talking about these points here. You're seeing them on the screen. So not only are you hearing my voice and we're talking about this, but you're seeing confirmation in the bullet points, and that can kind of help tell the story, and also kind of helps vary the visuals. So you can see me switching between my full shot and the visuals. Steven switching between me and the three box with all of us. but it helps kind of emphasize your points. Whether it's a full screen graphic or whether it's the lower third that you see here, or maybe you can incorporate a scrolling graphic, or depending on your show, if you're doing sports, it might be just be the score, or it might be player stats, but it might be something. But what's great about it is you can use graphics to your advantage. The thing I would say is, and I know we've tried to do this in the show, obviously they're nicely designed, they're good to look at, they make sense, they have a design platform. But I know, Jeff, I know you're particularly good with graphics. I don't know if you have anything to add in any of those points or the graphics points, but again, my feeling is you have the full screen, utilize that real estate and tell that story.
No, you hit it right on the head, Marty. I mean, you've got 4 corners of a screen for a reason, and I go back a lot of times when I think of people I've seen in the past, people who, have in their Facebook Live title, "I'm your organizational coach," and yet they're broadcasting from a dining room full of old boxes that are about to turn over. You've gotta look at the entire nonverbal that you're sending out when you do your show, and there are 3 areas. There's your content, there is your production, and there's your creative. And each of those things, to me, that's kind of the tripod that you stand on to really make really solid content. And when all 3 of those are firing and the pistons are all working great, you can know that you're putting your best foot forward. And in terms of creative uses, one of our now regular viewers, Dave Fierstein, is a friend of mine from the fire rescue system, who has a very successful website called Power Call Sirens. And earlier this year, late December, he decided he was going to dive into the live stream mix, and he brings basically where he's designing graphics live for people who've put in an order, and there'll be the 9/11 memorials, there'll be all kinds of in between kind of things, and he's sitting there and he's telling you how they work, the process of what colors work well with what kind of apparatus and that kind of thing. Brilliant use of bringing people in on a more technical side, and that kind of goes in hand, Steve, as you know, we both just looked at this great comment from Rebecca on LinkedIn, that sometimes you've got to be more technical with your content to engage people, because when you're kind of trying to cover everything, lowest common denominator, you end up being a little out of focus and it's not quite, that great. And so, I think she makes a great comment that, sometimes you find great success in dialing it in like Dave did for Power Call Sirens.
Yeah, I think there could be, and I know we have a tendency to do this where we get too technical on some instances where we start talking way above people's heads, and I get that, and I think there's that common ground, right? We have to find. I think we found that at least with this show. But when it comes to really, uh, really kind of drawing the people in, this was something we talked about, and let's just discuss the elephant in the room, right? So you guys have seen a change in the graphical situation here on the show. It was a welcomed one because here you got three broadcasters coming on here and doing a show and utilizing what we think looks good, but to an outside source could be kind of distracting, right, for viewers out there. So what do? We had an outside source look at it. She did a great job, put some stuff together, and this is what we have. So I think that you know what Marty has to say, with keeping everything kind of tied together with everything that we're doing. I think that if people are doing that in their broadcast, you're going to keep the viewership. You're going to keep people watching you, and I think there's something to the clarity of it, right? I've been on some shows where they have the bullet points, but they're just not clear on the point that they're trying to make. You guys know what I'm saying with that? I mean, I've
Oh
seen that,
yeah.
and it's like the bullet points are there, but there's just no clarity to it, right?
Yeah, real quick, I'll share this. I was having dinner yesterday. There's a restaurant in my area that I love, and I do their social media. And there was a very nice gentleman at the bar there, and he obviously was well dressed. You could tell he had a lot of money, worked in the I think the stock market area. And he found out what I did, and he says, I'm trying to buy a company to do what you do to follow me around all day. He says, I want to build a personal brand. I'm like, hey, that's great, what's your message? And that kind of went over his head just a little bit. And he said, hey, I don't really know what the message is. And I said, well, it's great that you want to build a brand. I said, but at the end of the day, what do you want people to do when they've seen what you've presented to them? There's got to be a call to action there to help people move that needle, because obviously it's not enough just to be known by people. It's that whole know, like, and trust factor. And so you gotta really think more strategically in some of this. And I actually think he's gonna do really well with what he's talking about. But it's just an illustration. A lot of times we think the miracle is just by doing, all of a sudden, it's like the Wizard of Oz, someone else takes over and all the likes and follows and all the success happens. It doesn't work that way, does it?
No, and we're gonna talk a little bit about likes and follows next week. So you guys make sure you want to tune in for that. But before we get into Marty's last point, I do want to put this out there, guys. I mean, we are extremely thankful that Telestream has allowed us to do the show, and we get to come on here every week and talk to you guys about social media strategies and broadcasting and gear and cameras and microphones and all that good stuff here on social. But one of the things that we have to do is we have to pay the bills too. And if you're looking for a solution out there, Telestream has a great solution in the Wirecast gear. Now, you saw Marty doing some switching on his end. I do some switching on my end. But if you head over to telestream.net/on social, you can check out the variety of Wirecast gearboxes. I did get shipping confirmation. I know I've been saying this the last couple weeks, but I got shipping confirmation. My gear should be here on Tuesday, and I'm really excited because I have Gear 1 currently, and this machine is just unbelievable. So you guys want to check it out. You want an all-in-one solution with multiple inputs, bringing in, as Marty said, NDI sources, virtual sets. You can have cool backgrounds like we're using right now, all in one box. There's a lot of different pricing, so you can check out the different depending on the input you need: HDMI, SDI, anywhere from $6,000 all the way up to $9,000. You can check it out. Or maybe you already have a powerful PC and you want to check out a powerful broadcasting streaming solution like Wirecast. Once you're on this page, you can just come up here to products and click on Wirecast, and you'll be able to check out the awesome software that tells the folks over at Telestream. We use it here and helps make our production look the way it does and get out to the world. Guys, you can go to many different destinations, as you guys all know. It's a great, great platform. We've been using it. I've been using it for like 12 years now. So, um, pretty awesome. And thank you
One
guys,
one thing I want
Telestream.
to add to that, Stephen, real quick before I get into the last set of points about Wirecast is what's great about it is, you talked about the gearbox, and that's certainly a high-end solution. I've got one here, and it works fantastic, and it's the mating between hardware and software works great. What's great about Wirecast is you can start, say if that's not in the cards for you right away, you can start with the software. Like you said, you have a PC, and it's great because you can get into Wirecast for as little as I think it's $249. I think
Yep.
the Wirecast one, yeah. So that's reasonable. Like, is there a free trial or is
30-day
I'm
free
not sure.
trial.
So there is a free trial, so you can kind of kick the tires and see how it works for you. But that's what's great. And what's great about that is you might get into it, and then you can always go up from there. Like Steven's showing the software there, $249 get you in the door, and then and then you can add to it. You can upgrade. You can even get into the Wirecast gear. So it all works together. Once you learn the software, there's an upgrade path, which is great. So that's what I love about it. But anyways, enough of that. Let's get into the third point about creating compelling content. And Jeff mentioned it a little bit before, and that's call to action, right? So you have everyone there, you're developing a platform, you have your audience, you're solving problems, you're creating great content, and then you got everyone there, and then it's time to end the stream. And then what do you do? Well, you always want to have a call to action. What do I mean by that? Here are some examples. If you have a website, right? Send them to a website link. You might like say if you have a business, say if, again, I'm going to use a video editing as an example. Say you have a video editing business and you have a website. Well, you're talking about video editing and you offer that as a service, send them there. If you want more information, check out abc.com or whatever your website is. That's a great way. And you always want to direct them somewhere else after your stream is over. Another good thing to do as a call to action is ask a question. Steven did that at the very top of the show. He asked people, "Are you Wirecast users now?" Put a one in the chat, or if you're not, put a zero. What that does is not only you're finding out about your audience, maybe some of the challenges or where they stand or what they're interested in, but you're also creating engagement, and that's very very important. Um, direct them to a landing page. Again, maybe you have a business and you have a product or service and you want to offer that. A landing page is a specialized page, and what's good about a landing page is you can direct them to a page specifically for that show. And what that's gonna offer you is you can do all kinds of research there and see who responds to your offer, based on the show that you're doing, and that could really offer some good information for you, especially if you have a business. Another thing you do is, if you have a newsletter, invite people to subscribe. That's another good way to keep the conversation going, and also you're capturing emails, and again, you wanna create that community, and especially chances are if you're doing live video, you're probably using another service like YouTube, and it's all well and great or Facebook, but you also wanna own that community as well. You wanna make sure that you can directly interact with that community. Great way to do it is to get their email and be able to communicate to them directly. And having a newsletter, invite people to subscribe. That's a good way to do it. Another good way to do it, keep that connection going, is invite people to connect with you on your social channels. Stephen does a great job with this show and always talks about connecting with both Jeff and myself and Stephen on social channels, and look where to find us, and that's another good way to extend that conversation. And lastly, if you have, especially if you have a business, and you have a product or service, offer a free trial or sample to your audience, to that particular audience. And you may, again, that's where the landing page comes in. You may want to direct them to a special landing page, and make it special, where just for people watching your show, here I got a special offer, and it does two things. One, you're providing a product or service, you're introducing to your product or service. But number two, you're creating that community. It's something special, and you're getting information as far as what people are interested in. Are they interested in your product or service? So that provides three things right there. So Jeff or Stephen, I'm not sure if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think, Marty, I think at the end of the day, I think what makes great content is that you first got to believe that you can create great content. And you're totally right, from the cadence of, how you assemble that content to the call to action. I think the thing that for me that I see in people who move from being a live streamer to being somebody who actually begins to get better guests, to be someone who's getting better traction, they begin thinking like a TV producer. They begin thinking, you know what, I could actually call the local venue and maybe interview the tribute band that's coming to town, rather than thinking I need to stand outside and, maybe I'll be able to say hi. They begin thinking a little bit more like a journalist. And when you do that, I think you're going to have a lot more success, because now you're believing in your game. There's a story to tell. You just have to find a creative way to tell it.
No, I agree with that, and that's one thing we do. I think we do on this show pretty well. Like we just did the call to action for the Telestream products. We took you to a landing page. There's a free trial. But one of the things that I think we all have different perspectives on this, and I think when we switch this up, where like this week Marty's been leading the topic, last week Jeff you kind of drove it. Um, there's different viewpoints, and I think people latch on to that. It's rather than the same person just driving everything all the time. I think that adds to it. But I think there has to be some form of call to action. You have to do that. I mean, we do that at the end of the show here. You'll see that here in just a few minutes. Getting people to subscribe to your channels. I mean, because if you're not promoting yourself, who's going to promote it, right? If you're not doing your due diligence. And I talk to people a lot of times about that. A lot of people get so wrapped up, and we'll kind of finish with this argument here. A lot of people get wrapped up with getting on social media. They get on YouTube or they get on Facebook, and they put all their eggs into Facebook or YouTube. Um, and if you guys remember, do you remember the social platform called Blip.tv? Do you guys remember that from a
Mhm.
few years ago? Everybody did the same thing with that. They put, for those that don't know, Blip.tv was like a YouTube or a Vimeo type platform. And a lot of people put a lot of their stake into that. And Mevio. Mevio was another big platform. And they put all their video and content into there. And guess what happened? They had no website. They had no other presence on the internet. And one day, and I remember because I used Mevio and Blip TV too, just as like a third party, I got an email that says, you have 24 hours to get your content out because guess what? We're
Wow.
closing. Mind you, some of these guys have been on these platforms for 5+ years. Now imagine 5+ years of content, and you're putting all these eggs in one basket. So when Marty says about, you want a landing page, you need a website, period. You need to be able to drive your customers. Don't send them to a Facebook, page store. send them to your website. We send people to Telestream's website. Why? Because they have control over it. It's always going to be there. YouTube isn't going to just, Google's not going to wake up, Jeff, one day and just say, well, we'll save it for you guys because you've been good to us for a few years, right?
Well, what a lot of it is, Steve, is that we may think, oh, Facebook or Google are never going to go away. But one thing you can guarantee is at some point they may come back and go, hey, that's going to be $400 a year for
Yeah.
us to hold your content.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you have to think about it. And, you talk about, Blip TV. I'm thinking about Blab. I mean, that's where
Oh,
my
yeah.
friends like Jennifer, I met you there, Jeff Adams, all these great people. And same thing, you get really excited about a particular destination. And then all of a sudden, it's like you just drop off the radar of the things you should be doing, which is always archive your content, find a way to keep everything. And you're right, plant these seeds in different places and let it all grow in the right way.
The thing I would like to emphasize, Stephen, is you hit the nail on the head. Is you could be on the biggest platform, YouTube and Facebook. Likely, they're incredibly successful. They got a ton of people that engage on those platforms. Likely, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. The problem is, and you highlighted, is they can change the rules at any time.
Yep.
And we're going through this with YouTube now. Now, I'm not a big YouTuber at all, but I see it, with the COPA, and these are some things that are beyond their control. They have to deal with it, but rules change, different things change. They could change their advertising, the way people generate income, all that stuff. Facebook is always messing around with the algorithm. It could change anything, can make any rules they want. And I can't overemphasize that enough. A building community, you gotta have a way it's your community that you're building. You have to have a way to get to them directly. And Steven, I think you're right on target as far as the website goes. That's where it starts. And that's gotta be your home base. And we talked about this all the time. And use these other services as satellite and don't take it for granted. It looks great now, but just do not take it for granted.
Absolutely. Guys, we appreciate you all tuning in here to On Social. And remember, we do have a Discord chat room. So no matter if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or even LinkedIn, you can join the conversation. If you have Discord, just look for On Social, on dash social, and you'll be able to find it on the Discord channel for those of you. I know there's some links that you're usually floating around. Some of the guys posted in the chat room, but we do appreciate you guys tuning in. And make sure you guys go over to the Facebook page, Telestream, and like that page so you don't miss any of the great content that's going out. Go over to the YouTube channel, Telestream Tube or Wirecast Tube. There's two channels. You can subscribe to both of them to get the latest and greatest in video, tutorials, demonstration, webinars, all that cool stuff. And if you still have some time, we'd really appreciate you going over and liking our LinkedIn page. Just look up Telestream, you'll find us. But again, guys, thank you so much. Jeff Fitzgerald, we got your name right on the tag there, so you're all good there. And Jeremy, we had to let him go this week. It's all good.
Yeah, we had to do that. Hey, listen, if any of my friends who watch are in the Charlotte area, I will be there tomorrow through Sunday. I'm speaking at a strategic fire recruiting conference, part of the fire work that I do, and would love to maybe hang out with you. So give me a call, get in touch with me.
Awesome. And you guys could check out Jeff in highdef.tv, and also on all the social media. You're pretty much Jeff in high def everywhere, so they can probably
Yeah,
look
I
you up.
haven't figured out how to make J in 4K yet. I don't think it has the same ring, so I'm just gonna. I should have taken Jeff and VHS and left it at that. So
We also want to thank Mr. Marty McPadden from podjam.tv. We appreciate you joining us as well.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure to be here.
You guys can check in with Marty. Just look up Marty McPadden just about everywhere, and you'll find him, or look up his podjam.tv extension. You'll find everything there, and I think he's been working on it. So we'll.
Yeah, I'll be on the road again soon. So, yep.
Jeremy's getting
I'll
all
stop.
offended in the chat room. He's like, "What? Wait, what do you mean? Let me go?" Don't worry, Jeremy. We're gonna have you on again. We had a great time with you, but we're just messing around. So, guys, let me just say we really appreciate you. And remember, next week we're going to talk about likes versus follows and why that may not be something that you should really put your focus and attention on. So that's going to be next week. We'll see you next time for more here of On Social. Have a great week, everybody.